over half the state to Anadarko Oil Company. And they're dealing with this business of fracking. Now, one of the big things about fracking is that you use a lot of water, which the state doesn't have. The second thing is, now we're getting all these reports from Ohio and Oklahoma and places like that about fracking is causing earthquakes. And I'm wondering if the legislature is taking a look at the issue of fracking and the oil companies dealing with this.
I can handle this one. Okay, if you want to talk about it, let me just talk a little about some of the things. One of the things that's happened.
What happens when you bring a leader to the meeting?
I'm sorry. Do you want to go? Do you want to?
No way.
Okay.
Although I couldn't talk about the water, actually. In December, the governor walked in by accident to the House District 3 meeting. He was actually there to go upstairs and build a gingerbread house with his son. He walks in the building and there are all these Dems sitting. So the issue of fracking came up and I asked him about the water issue. And he said actually that they recover most of that water and
But is it clean?
reuse it. They can reuse it for other things, they repurpose it.
So fracking, a couple of different things around fracking. One is, the big question is what is in the fluids that they're fracking, okay? And there's been a big push for disclosure nationwide. And so with the governor's leadership, you had, in December, you had people like the Environmental Defense Fund, which are, some people would say extreme environmentalists. And you had Anadarko and Halliburton, all of them, sitting at a table and talking about how do we come up with a sensible rule. And I think most people thought it wasn't going to they weren't going to come to agreement. At the end of the day, they actually came to the strongest disclosure rule in the country. And now other states are looking to Colorado and saying, well, if this works in Colorado, why can't we do it here? And starting to learn from our examples on that. So basically it says you have to disclose everything you have in there unless you have it as a trade secret, but that trade secret has to be available to the public health officials in case there's any incident. So it's all out there, it's just not all of it's completely public, but it's there if you need to have it there. So it's the strongest rule. I think that really is going to help a lot. There is more steps the governor's working on. And the legislature is around disclosure, around how do you make sure it's not harming the water. One of the things to note, and the governor just was actually talking to us about this, and most of us think about him as a beer man, a craft brewer, but in reality he moved to Colorado because he was a geologist and only started brewing beer when he lost his job as a geologist. But a lot of the East Coast states, where the natural gas is just under the surface, close to where the water table is. In Colorado, where the gas is really far down from where the water surface is. So you don't really have the same instance, but you need to make sure, one, what is going in, the tubes they're putting in, and I don't know the technical terms, is done right, because that's where problems come. If the casing isn't done correctly, you can have problems. So I think there's talk about how do we regulate and make sure we're getting best practices around casings. Also, as fracking and drilling for natural gas is moving more to the Front Range and into communities, you're hearing people you wouldn't think are saying, we need to take a look at this from local communities. So you have people like El Paso County, Douglas County putting moratoriums on drilling, which is not what you would think given the political landscape around this.
Yeah, a year ago, those folks were all saying, drill, baby, drill.
Right. And now as it's coming into their neighborhoods, people are saying, right, we don't mind you drilling somewhere else, just don't do it in our backyard. And so there will be a lot of conversations in the legislature, I think, around what is the proper role of local regulation versus state regulation. I actually do think the industry has a valid point when they say we don't want 65 different regulations. So there is some issues around local control versus state control. But it is going to be an issue in the legislature. I think the disclosure we did a lot. The question is next steps. How do we make sure it's safe? The industry's been fracking for a long time. It's just getting more and more understanding of what it means and what it's happening. And there are incidences of earthquakes. It's rare, but I think there's a lot of that's around integrity of the casing, and if there's problems around, and I went to a talk about this.
Some of it's more the formations that they're doing it in.
No, but also the biggest earthquake in Ohio was due because of the water coming back up was really it wasn't the frac itself, it was the after because of the casing being broken or something. I don't remember. I shouldn't talk about things I don't know.
Let me just add really quick that there are several issues pending before the Budget Committee that have to do with this. The Oil and Gas Commission is looking to bring in some additional staff because the permit applications to drill more are really going up. And again, some of this is that they've discovered a lot of gas, that you can drill and access in eastern Colorado, Weld County and eastern Adams and Arapahoe and Elbert counties. This whole Niobrara formation is what it's called. And so we're going to see a lot more activity. And, it's a difficult issue because, for instance, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a bill to help Xcel Energy convert some of its coal-burning power plants to natural gas. It's a cleaner burning fuel where we don't have a lot of the pollution issues that were getting us in trouble with the Clean Air Act. And so we want to see more use of cleaner fuels like natural gas, and if we can produce it here in Colorado and have that be a source of jobs and revenue for industry and also tax revenue from severance tax, those are all good things for the state. I think this year one of the things we're going to talk about at the legislature is incentives for commercial fleets of vehicles to convert to natural gas vehicles, and more incentives for making it more possible for there to be fuel stations that supply natural gas to natural gas vehicles, again, to reduce emissions and have cleaner burning fuels. And so, there's some really good things to natural gas production that are all things I think we want to move in that direction, but there's a lot of concern. And so having more regulators at the Oil and Gas Commission, and that would be paid for by permit fees from the industry, not our tax dollars, but fees from the industry, but to make sure that we're adequately supervising and monitoring and regulating this industry is one of the things that's a budget issue this year. And then also, there's been increasing conflicts, as Mark was saying, between local governments like El Paso County trying to regulate in this area where they're using their land use powers to sort of start regulating who's drilling and how you're drilling and things that really are the purview of the Oil and Gas Commission. And local governments are kind of overreaching a little bit and getting a little outside of their technical expertise. And there's some conflicts and there's some potential cases that are going to end up in court if we don't resolve some of this. And so one of the other requests before the Budget Committee is to add staff to the Oil and Gas Commission specifically to work with local governments on how their land use regulations and decisions interact with the regulation on the drilling side of this industry, because there's a series of conflicts that are starting to shape up in cases that I don't think anybody really wants to see go to court to sort of test the boundaries of what's the state's power to regulate drilling versus what are local government's powers to do land use and zoning kinds of issues. If we can all head off those conflicts, I think it's going to be better for everybody if everybody works together. And so there's a proposal to hire a couple more people with technical expertise at the Oil and Gas Commission whose sole job would be to work with local governments and county commissioners and city councils who do land use issues.
So I saw a question.
And I know that actually Senator Morgan is looking at trying to run a bill to require the people who are doing some of the fracking, especially in areas where it's close to urban areas or maybe near, say, old uranium spots or something, to have some kind of bond so that if we do find out they did damage, that there's funds available to make whole the areas that were damaged.
Just one last thing on this point. Some of you may live in Senator Lucia Guzman's district, and she had been talking all fall about introducing a bill on disclosure around the fracking fluids and ingredients. And with the new regulations that the Oil and Gas Commission just came out with, and actually a lot of people I think give her some credit for kind of threatening to introduce a bill that I think forced the regulators to really cut as tough a deal as they could with the industry on disclosure. And so Senator Guzman has decided to withdraw her bill on that subject because of these new regs that just came out. So.